We're recording. So, good morning. Welcome. First, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Stephen Webb, and I head up the Technology Enhanced Learning team, the TEL team here at Portsmouth. The TEL team has been working incredibly hard with colleagues in academic development to put on this week-long festival of blended learning. And first, I'd just like to say thank you to them for putting together such an interesting, wide-ranging, thought-provoking blend of sessions at such short notice. I mean, they've worked really hard. One of those team members is Sean, who is presenting and looking after the text chat for me. We've had a number of sessions concerning content capture and video already this week. Yesterday we had Richard Poole talking about the use of video in his distance learning course, and we had an external speaker from Chichester, Jenny White, talking about the power of Panopto. And if you haven't seen them, do watch the recordings when they're available. They were both really good sessions. This session, unfortunately, is where the quality is going to drop, I'm afraid. You'll notice that the advanced publicity for all the other sessions have had an outline and a list of session aims and all that usual good practice. For this session, for reasons that will become clear later, we weren't in a position when the call for papers came out to prepare a fully thought through session. We knew we wanted to say something about content capture, but we didn't know even a week ago exactly what it was we'd be able to say. So we left this as an open session with an opportunity for the Q&A. And Sean and I, we're happy to take questions, perhaps by the text chat button in the first instance. But even over the course of the past couple of days, things have moved on in terms of the technology that the TEL team has been working on. So I'd like in this session to talk a bit more than I thought I would do. So this forum is going to be less open than we'd anticipated and a bit more presentational because there are things we can say. But don't forget, there's a Tea at 3 session this afternoon, and we can have more of a discussion about content capture then if people are interested. What I'd like to do is give some background about the content capture story here at Portsmouth first, because it's difficult sometimes to get the story out to the university community. So for the past 4 years, we've run a digital experience survey of students. And every year, the main request made by students has been for lecture capture. And some lecturers here at Portsmouth have been capturing lectures for years. They record their lecture, make it available via Moodle, and students love it. But those students then ask, why don't all lecturers record their lectures? And they talk to their friends who've gone to other universities and find out that they have access to recorded lectures and they really value it. And they ask, why can't they have it here? So this student demand was clear many years before COVID-19 forced the issue. In response to that student demand, the university set up a content capture working group chaired by Harriet Dunbar-Morris, and it was purposely called content capture rather than lecture capture for reasons that will become clear later. We consulted widely with staff and students using both online surveys and town hall meetings, so there has been consultation. And the University Students' Union, UPSU, analysed the responses, and I'd like to share just a couple of findings from that consultation. because there was agreement, it was an interesting agreement, but also differences in staff-student perception of all of this. So, firstly, staff and students agreed, understood that content capture could mean and should mean different things. So within the margin of error, these are essentially identical results between staff in green and students in purple. And this referred to current practice, what was happening at Portsmouth a couple of years ago. And it's clear that capture is not about taking a video of a lecturer standing at the front of a lecture theatre delivering. So it's often just computer screen capture plus audio. So audio and slides, that's a common approach to content capture, or was 2 years ago. It can be audio and video of the presenter and slides. Sometimes it's just audio. I mean, increasingly, personally, I really like podcasts. So audio only is an option. It could be just audio and video of a presenter. So there's no computer involved at all. It's just someone talking. Or it could be something else entirely, like a Pencast. I've been a big fan of Pencasts myself for years. They're really good technology. So even a couple of years ago, people were doing lots of different things. But there was a big difference. I mean, a statistically significant, large difference between what students wanted to be captured and what staff were comfortable with being captured. And essentially, all students wanted lectures to be captured, for example, and just over half of teaching staff thought that this was a good idea. Excuse me. And the reasons why lecturers were a bit more ambivalent are pretty obvious, and I'm sure everyone is aware of what those might be. But students thought that other formal taught sessions should be captured too. So in response to that consultation and student demand, the working group went on to develop a content capture policy, again with input from across the university and with student involvement. And the policy was only approved by Academic Council this month, so all of this is new. If you haven't seen it, there's a link to the policy here. You can also find the link via one of our recent posts on our Telltales blog, Emma Cripps, and in conjunction with a member of the student body has written an interesting post on content capture and the policy and how it has been developed. But I'd just like to point out a couple of highlights from the policy. First of all, its purpose. The policy starts out with a recognition of why students want material to be captured. And it's not that students want to skip lectures. I mean, that's explicitly not what students are saying they want. They're saying they want the opportunity to revisit difficult points. I'm thinking back to my time as a student. There were certain lectures where the lecturer, for whatever reason, was struggling with a concept, or the concept itself is quite difficult, or it's an important threshold concept. And it would have been so valuable back when I was a student to be able to revisit what it was the lecturer was saying 3, 4, 5 times until something clicked. So it's that opportunity to revisit difficult points. It takes away that cognitive overhead of taking notes. it's really quite difficult to listen to someone talk, watch what it is that they're writing or presenting on slides, process that in real time and write notes. It's a difficult skill. And if you take away the pressure of note-taking, actually note-taking can improve, and research has shown that. Content capture can help students whose first language isn't English. It can be used as a valuable revision source. And it does help those students who can't make a live session for whatever reason. And the pressures, as we know, on students nowadays are much greater than they were, certainly when I was a student. So the policy explicitly starts off with a recognition of that. And it then goes on to make a statement that in support of a consistent and inclusive student experience, where possible and appropriate, staff are strongly encouraged to record and publish relevant aspects of all formal teaching sessions. Now, I think that term, relevant aspects, is important because recording a 2-hour lecture is probably not a good idea. Students are not going to want to watch a 2-hour recording. An analysis shows that students don't watch 2-hour recordings. They fast forward and focus on particular bits, and they'll look at those bits several times until whatever it is that needs to click clicks. So lecture capture is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about content capture, and there are lots and lots of ways of using content capture. And Jenny White, in her session yesterday, Jenny from Chichester, she gave that talk about how she has been using capture technology, and there are lots of creative ways of using it. So you can flip the classroom, you can explain rubrics, you can make videos about those important threshold concepts, you can use it for feedback. There's all sorts of interesting stuff. And it's probably a good idea just to have a play with this technology and see what you can do with it. If you haven't seen Jenny's presentation, I know that the team will be making it available in the next few days, if it's not already available. And I thought Jenny's use of content capture was a really nice fit with what our content capture policy is intending to achieve. It's not about video recording the lecturer in every lecture. It's not about performing in front of a camera. It's about providing high quality content to students for the reasons I mentioned above. But we have a problem, and that's that the content capture solutions that people have been using, and as we saw earlier in one of those slides, they won't scale to meet the needs of the institution, and that they won't be able to support that content capture policy. In the case of Relay, for example, which a lot of people have been using, the platform is no longer supported by the supplier, so it's unsupported software, and they won't host a service for us outside of America. So we have to move away from that platform at some point. So we do have a problem, for which now we have a solution. Fingers crossed. The solution is Panopto. It's a video platform. It's widely used in the US and the UK, but we only bought it at the start of the month, 2 weeks ago. That's why I said at the start of this session that the situation seems to change on an hourly basis. And as I'm talking now, the team are still doing a lot of work behind the scenes on it, but we hope to make it available to people before the end of this month. and to OCDs hopefully before then. If you're keen to learn more about Panopto and you can't wait, there's a ton of guidance and ideas and suggestions on Panopto's own website. As you can see from this screenshot, which I took from their website yesterday, it was developed in the university system. It came out of a university system. It's being used by many universities across the US and the UK. But if you can wait for a couple of weeks, then we'll be providing Portsmouth-specific training and guidance. But I just want to emphasize that it is a very intuitive, easy-to-use system. It's nothing to get scared about, and Webex, personally, I find much more difficult system to navigate than Panopto. So if you can handle Webex, Panopto is no problem. So Sean and I have had a play with this system, made a couple of recordings yesterday. I told you this is last minute stuff. Unfortunately, it's difficult to play videos via Webex. I mean, you have to play videos direct. If you try and do it via Webex, there's just too much going on. It sort of works, but it takes up too much bandwidth. So instead, I'm just going to give you a couple of screenshots from the these recordings. You can see Sean's videos on the web page. They have been embedded on this session's web page, so you can see them direct. I can make mine available if anyone's interested. I suspect this isn't of any interest. One question that came up yesterday in Richard Poole's session was whether we needed high production values. Richard thought it was important. Personally, I think it's better to be authentic. I think it helps develop a connection with the student, but that's something probably for you as content producers to think about. So I started my little test recording with a little picture-in-picture view of myself, just to make that initial welcome, that initial connection. But personally, I think it takes up then just screen space that's not needed. So after that initial welcome, I minimized myself. And this particular recording was of a little piece of mathematics. So I went through step by step the derivation of the solution of the general quadratic equation. And I used a tablet to do the writing. It could just as easily have been on paper. I captured this with a visualizer, but there are other ways of capturing that. And you can imagine asking a student to look at this. It's a 4-minute recording. Post it on Moodle, ask them to look at it, which they can do as many times as they wish, and then set up a Moodle quiz, for example, to serve up random variations of this equation so that they can test their understanding on that equation, but different instances of it, as many times as they wish. That piece of content, the video plus the quiz, would take literally 5 minutes to do, but the learning time for students could be much longer than that, and it could be much more valuable. And this happens to be the capture of some mathematics, but you could do exactly the same thing with sketches, with drawing, with models, with creative stuff. It doesn't all have to be about PowerPoint. So on to Sean. I'll talk for you, Sean, if you don't mind. So this is another test recording, this time made by my colleague yesterday afternoon, and he wanted to emphasize again that the interface is very friendly, it's very simple, and I think most of us will want to keep it simple. it's press of a button and then that's it. But you can do more complicated things if you wish. So for example, you could have multiple streams, a couple of capture devices. You might want to use that if you're talking about different views of an experiment, for example. It has good control. It enables you to have good control over audio levels. And here, Sean just wanted to emphasize that there's an inbuilt editor. And I suspect, actually, for most people, the inbuilt editor will be fine. So you can top and tail your recordings. If you wish, there's nothing to stop you using a dedicated video editor. So there was some discussion yesterday in Richard's session about using Camtasia or one of the Adobe pieces of software. Yeah, you can use a dedicated video editor if you wish, but I suspect for most people, simple topping and tailing will be fine, particularly when we're talking about short videos, which is probably what we should be. Panopto provides auto captioning, so this is going to help us with accessibility requirements. So it's automatically going to provide you with editable captions. It's not going to be 100% accurate because there are no automatic speech recognition systems that are 100% accurate. But from what we've seen, it's very good. And it's probably going to be a judgment call, I think, about whether you need to go in and edit for accuracy. In many cases, probably you won't need to. In some cases, you might. But the burden is taken off you with auto captioning. This, I think, is potentially a really powerful technique. You can add quizzes within the video very simply. So you can add a true false question or a multiple choice question or a multiple select question or a fill in the blank question. And this very easily makes the content that you're generating much more interactive. And it's going to help with student engagement, actually getting students to engage with the content rather than just passively view it. So stop the action, ask students a question. It's going to be a powerful technique, I think. We hope to make the system work really seamlessly with Moodle. So if you're editing your Moodle site, then you should just be able to click a button and start making a Panopto video for your site. It should be as simple as that. The team is currently working on these integrations, but it will work seamlessly with Moodle. And this is another test recording from Sean about tips and tricks. We'll be providing guidance on the use of Panopto, and we hope to facilitate a Panopto user group within the university. This particular slide is about the wisdom of keeping recordings short, and I think that's good advice. You know, a 5-minute focused recording is much easier to create. It's much easier for students to engage with. Students are much more likely to recall the information in that video. And if you have to re-record the content, maybe because the world has changed, it becomes a lot easier to re-record that 5-minute video than an hour-long lecture. In the spirit of keeping things short, I'm going to end it there. I know that time is valuable, so I'm going to stop the presentation aspect of it, and now we're open, I think, to questions.
We've got no questions in the chat so far. I'm just to throw in, excellent what you said, Stephen. Pretty much summarised whatever I would have said anyway. But I can make those PowerPoints available. The videos are embedded. They're certainly not Hollywood productions. They're literally my thoughts and experiences to do with Panopto and lecture capture. David's just asked, can Panopto be used from home on a Mac? Yes, it can. And there's actually support materials for how you can install Panopto on your Mac as well. That we've got, I should say, Panopto's support is second to none, really. The amount of support we've got in terms of guides, videos, and things. What we're doing is collating those and putting them in a central space. But on release of Panopto, we will be able to sort of provide you with all the help you needed.
Yeah, I'd have to just second what Sean said there about Panopto as a company so far. They have worked really quickly and well with us, and to get a platform, an institution-wide platform, up and running in the time that they've done is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know the normal timeframes, probably 6 months, a year, and a transitional period between systems, perhaps. But we're essentially working by the end of the month. We're on the line to hopefully get it all out there. We've just had another question from Scott saying, can OCDs edit the content recorded by academics? Because of the integration with Moodle, we hope to give a bit like category access where you can see the sites. You will also be able to edit any videos within those sites. So yes would be the answer to that, providing they're in the right spot. There's a question from Emma. Oh, but it just says I've answered it. You can, so within the inbuilt editor, you can edit the whole video, but you can also edit individual streams within it. So if there's a certain section, whether it's on the PowerPoint slide or the video, you could cut that out if it doesn't meet copyright standards, or put something over the top of it. You can use whatever you want, really, to avoid that copyright issue. We've got a question from Michelle. Will this be used instead of fused recording of student assessments and the Relay assessed video server? Yes, essentially. We would, to do what assessed video does, we would have to give students particular access to create videos themselves and a space to drop them in. But yes, it would take the place of assessed video, because you would then be able to mark it as well. Annabelle Harrison's asked if they would continue to have access to Camtasia Studio, which
I think that's a separate question to this. So I don't see that Panopto replaces Camtasia Studio, and there may be times and situations where you need to use Camtasia Studio.
Certainly that sort of post-production element, if you're doing conferences or external speaker, I can definitely still see where you would want to use Camtasia Studio.
Yeah.
But the editor is very good as well. Let's have a look. Joanne Park. Shared between in-house students, partner request a change to the participants on the Moodle page to make it more specific to UOP. Sorry, I'm trying to digest your chat.
I think, Joanne, what we need to do is go away and think about that. We're recording this, so the question will be recorded. Off the top of my head, I think I couldn't give an answer. I think we'd need to sit down and have a chat with you.
Yeah, certainly. I should say, along those lines, the ability to share videos is very intuitive. It works very much like Google in that you can make a video very closed down and viewable to specific people or anyone from the institution or open access. So the possibilities are endless on that front.
Chris has asked, do we need to ensure the video captioning is 100% accurate? I don't think anywhere that in the legislation it says that captioning has to be 100% accurate. I mean, they don't go into that level of detail in the legislation. I think it's about giving access to students, to all students. So there may well be, as you pointed out, technical language that Panopto misinterprets. If the misinterpretation meant that someone reading that couldn't understand what the point of the session was, then I think just ethically it's correct to go in and edit that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the content creator that has to do that. In some universities, for instance, they set that as a job for students. It's almost an assessment. Go in and try and find errors here, and they crowdsource the correction of captioning. You could imagine putting a disclaimer on there saying, if you think that this is inaccurate, let me know and I'll correct it. But I don't think we have to go in and make sure that every caption is 100% accurate. That's my understanding at present.
I think you did.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there in that we need to make the route for students to report any errors of the captioning as easy as possible. Almost the caveat to the service is that there may be errors. If you find any, please report it to, and if those are actionable quite quickly, then I don't see that there will be sort of big problems. And certainly from an eLearn point of view, we haven't been, of the videos that are captioned, we've not been inundated with requests, but that might be more a faculty. They might come directly to lecturers, so they might not all come to us.
And Tom, thank you, Tom. You've pointed out that the share to relay feature will be losing. We'll be losing that because we're losing relay, absolutely. But Camtasia, and that might limit the usefulness of Camtasia for some people, but nevertheless, I think Camtasia as a package, as a software package, is still useful.
What's really good with Panopto is the way the streams record at the same time, but they're separate entities. So to put it into Studio, you could put the audio, your mobile device, your visualizer, your camera as separate entities and play around with them individually. Just like you can play around with them individually in the editor, but certainly it gives more options if you're exporting it into Studio, really. And there's a really nice feature, I say it in my video, that you can download just an audio podcast of a video, which Stephen said he's into his podcasts at the minute, and so am I. That's a real easy win, really, if you wanted to share a podcast of a recording you've done. Just scrolling down. Yeah, Tom said he found the video editor easier. Certainly, you've got to find what works for you, really, when creating content. Certainly, with Panopto, the idea is that it shouldn't be a barrier to any good ideas that you might have recording content. It's more an enabler to get that content out there. And I think I said in my top tips that you can actually be quite creative. It doesn't always have to be slides and narration. That's most common, and it might work, but you can get really creative with pencasts. And I've seen some fantastic paleontology videos where they actually handle artifacts, and I've seen on location videos in A&E and things, and sometimes they're just as powerful rather than just talking about a concept. You can actually go out and record things on your phone. You can be a lot more flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are no more questions.
I should certainly stress that we're not just going to go, there's Panopto, go. There will be a lot of support, probably more support than we've ever had, really. We're certainly in the business to we want to encourage you to use Panopto, but to create this content. So hopefully we'll enable that with this software.
And there is a question there, what do we need to make a pencast? There's actually several ways of doing it. You can get special paper, for example, and special pens that record exactly what you write on paper or draw on paper, and it becomes an MP4 presentation automatically. So that's one way of doing it. With Panopto, an easy way of doing it is to get something like this, just a visualizer. You can get really cheap ones, or you can even make one with a camera tripod, camera phone, and some gaffer tape.
I was going to say you would be able to use your phone as well to do it.
Use your phone, yeah.
Lots of people have sort of not selfie sticks, but holders for their phone, and you could certainly place it and so that it captures your writing.
Yeah.
Annabelle Harrison, can video feedback be provided via Turnitin or Moodle assignment? Will it be a separate step? I'm pretty sure you can't do it within Turnitin. Moodle assignment, I think there would be a way to provide that. Certainly, it might be worth to. I'd have to talk to the team a bit more about that, but certainly you can provide any sort of assignment files.
Mike's going to say yes, aren't you?
Oh, I am. Yeah, yes. I was just going to feedback. Amy ran a really good session yesterday on recording feedback. So she was. It wasn't Turnitin, but it was in a Word document. It was highlighting text in advance and then providing feedback in video form. And she just expressed that you could do that in Panopto really easily with two screens, and then you could share that back via a Moodle assignment very easily. You could post the link to the Panopto video privately, so only the student could see it, and then you had the original text and the video alongside it. It would work really nicely in Panopto, I think.
Great, thanks, Mike. And Joanne's asked about a September start date. We're aiming to get Panopto available to staff for use at the end of this month. And we will provide, yes, training and support. But we still need to do some configuration and some testing. As I say, the university just bought it at the beginning of the month, so we're working as fast as we can to get it implemented, and we will get it to people before the end of the month.
Yeah, I think it's key that we're you will have all the support. It just, there's a few technical things. It can't go out until it's ready for public consumption, really, and that date will be as soon as it can be, before the end of the month. But in turn, there will be training and communications to help along the way once you can play with it.
Yeah, and absolutely, Joanne, it is challenging, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's it. It is well understood. But, so if there are, Tom, yeah.
Just on Joanne's point there of producing stuff, I think, and Sean, please back me up.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you were to produce something in Relay now, it could still be put into Panopto when it is live.
Yes.
So it's there will be a transition period.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. We're working on data migration, so old recordings that you've done in Relay that are in Compass, and any sort of Ubicast recordings as well. That data migration will happen, so it will end up in folders within Panopto. Whether at that point, there may be a point where we discuss with OCDs, we might have to match up the video with the people. That side of it might need to happen, but certainly videos won't be lost. What might happen is that you might need to relink things if you've provided links. It's the second phase once we've released Panopto out to the public, but we certainly won't be pulling the plug on, say, Compass initially. We will be migrating that data over to the Panopto system, because the idea of Panopto is that it's all one big umbrella, that it's not just creating videos, it's hosting and storing videos as well. And a really good thing is you can upload old content and old videos. So if you've got an old video and you upload it to Panopto, you can then use the editing tools and the auto captioning. That's particularly good if you've got an old video that isn't captioned. So that's quite exciting.
But you're quite right, Tom, and I should have made that point, that don't think of Panopto as a break on what you need to do. If time constraints mean that you only have, let's say, this week to do something, then use the tools that you currently use, and I'm sure that will be fine. And if you're using Relay, as Sean's just said, at a later date, we can get that into the Panopto platform. So if you're already using a particular approach and you can't wait, don't wait for Panopto. I mean, do what you need to do.
Chaim's just asked, is there opportunities for students to collaborate on a single group presentation by pausing during the end? I think we might need to test that and flesh that out. The way immediately that springs to mind is you could have students recording a group presentation and then give them all access to those videos, and you could stitch it together effectively to make it a group presentation. I don't know if you could have a live, lots of students accessing one recording, but I've not tested that. I'd have to try it myself and see. Always test to see if something works first.
Oh, Mike? Oh, and Tom.
In the training the other day that we had from Panopto, they had a really cool feature when you could stream from Webex to Panopto. So what you could imagine is the students in a Webex meeting taking turns to present the slides, but at the same time it's recorded. I mean, you can record in Webex, but and then upload to Panopto, but you could combine the two so you can edit later on and add extra bits. But I think Webex,
that's another way.
but Webex is probably a better tool for that than Panopto, because it's kind of it's Webex's presentation rather than video.
I think the key thing here is to think about the idea and the concept, and then you look at the technology as a way to enable you to do that. It might be that you initially think you're going to use Panopto or use Web, think one way, but actually you do whatever's best for the concept.
Definitely.
The bit I was going to throw in there as well is I think in Google Slides they could all collaborate on essentially the PowerPoint or the Google slide and share at the same time, so that they could each move on their slides. They build it together, present it together, and like you said, use the Webex to Panopto feature as we get there to do that recording element. So it's something definitely worth testing.
Yeah, I think that's key to it, is to actually have a play and try it yourself. If you're a faculty online course developer team, why don't all of you have a go at doing the assignment? Like, give it a good go, and then you'll see from a user point of view the limitations and the problems that come across, and the ones that you might have to answer the questions for.
Emma's asked about live streaming in Panopto. We haven't looked at it yet. We have had discussions with IS about it, Emma. But there are various other discussions taking place about what September and October might look like on campus. So it has been discussed, but we haven't actually done anything in anger with it yet. We were looking at this project as a phased project. Sort of phase one was just actually getting it and getting Panopto available for staff, and then phase two was going to be looking at what happens on campus. But things change so quickly, we might well have to look at what October is like on campus as well.
Certainly, there's numerous possibilities with Panopto going forward in terms of lecture capture, which again we would want to promote this idea of content capture, but certainly we're not going to be limited in using this technology and using Panopto. It will be able to do everything we've previously been able to do and more, hopefully, and hopefully it'll stimulate some good ideas.
I mean, that question about live streaming, I think it does open up that whole debate about asynchronous and synchronous teaching. And one of the problems that we might well have in TB1 is expecting students to be at a computer at a certain time for a live stream. So I think we do need to be thinking carefully about the construction, the design of the teaching that takes place. And personally, I think we should be having more reliance on asynchronous.
It's really interesting because by doing a live stream, it sort of goes against that whole concept that you're almost personalising it for the one viewer that's looking at it. If you go to live streaming, you're almost putting it you're talking to a big audience, and it goes very general, and it sort of flies in the face of some of the tips that we would say for sort of content capture and personalising it for the viewer, really.
But there's a real tension there, because in many ways it's very easy to do that, but whether it's the right thing to do, who knows?
It all goes back to the audience, really, and thinking about it's almost that reverse learning journey, and you've got to think about your learning outcomes and what you want them to achieve, but where they're reversing back from where they're at and how you're going to do those stepping stones to get there.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. This socially distanced classroom, yeah, there are so many different constraints that we've got to try and meet here. Yeah, absolutely. if there's no more, I'll say have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Stay safe, everyone, as they say. Bye.
Bye.
Good. Stop the recording.